Join me as I dive into the numbers and challenge myself to figure out if renting is really better for my finances than buying a home. When it comes to making big financial decisions, one of the most debated topics is whether it's better to rent or buy a home. This decision affects millions of people around the world, and the answer can have a significant impact on our financial well-being. As we weigh the pros and cons, it's essential to consider our individual circumstances, financial goals, and the current market conditions. Many of us have struggled with this decision, and it's easy to see why. On one hand, buying a home can be a significant investment and a crucial step towards building wealth. On the other hand, renting can provide more flexibility and freedom from the burden of maintenance costs. But as we navigate this complex decision, we're often faced with conflicting opinions, misleading information, and personal biases that can cloud our judgment. Adding to the complexity are the various lifestyle factors that come into play. For instance, if you're someone who loves to travel or move frequently, the idea of being tied down to a mortgage can be daunting. On the other hand, if you're planning to start a family or settle down in one place, buying a home can provide a sense of security and permanence. Then there are the financial considerations. Can you afford the down payment, mortgage payments, and ongoing expenses like property taxes and insurance? The answer to these questions isn't always clear-cut, and it's easy to get caught up in the emotional aspect of homeownership. But as we try to make a rational decision, we need to look beyond the emotional appeal and focus on the hard numbers. What are the real costs and benefits of renting versus buying? And how do these costs and benefits vary depending on our individual circumstances and goals? Let's take a closer look at the financial implications of both renting and buying. When you rent, you're essentially paying for the right to use someone else's property for a specific period. Your rent payments cover the landlord's mortgage, maintenance costs, and other expenses. In exchange, you get to enjoy the property without shouldering the long-term responsibilities. On the surface, this might seem like a good deal. After all, you're not responsible for maintenance, repairs, or property taxes. However, here's the kicker. When you rent, you're not building any equity in a property. Your rent payments are essentially gone forever, and you're left with nothing to show for it. In contrast, when you buy a home, you're building equity with every mortgage payment. Of course, this comes with its own set of expenses, property taxes, maintenance, insurance, and so on. But the key difference is that you're building wealth over time, and you can potentially sell the property for a profit in the future. Another critical factor to consider is flexibility. When you rent, you typically have more freedom to move around, whether it's for a new job opportunity or personal reasons. You're not tied down to a specific location or property, and you can pick up and leave with relatively short notice. In contrast, when you buy a home, you're making a long-term commitment to that property and location. But here's a surprising benefit of renting that few people consider. It can be a hedge against market fluctuations. When the housing market is hot, buying a home can be a smart investment. But when the market cools down, the value of your property can plummet. As a renter, you're not exposed to this market risk. You're not relying on the property's value to build wealth. Instead, you can focus on investing your money in other assets that are less correlated with the housing market. Now let's talk about the key insight that could change how you view renting versus buying. One of the most significant drawbacks of buying a home is the opportunity cost. The money you sink into a down payment, mortgage payments, and maintenance could be invested elsewhere. However, what if I told you that the average renter is actually missing out on a significant opportunity to build wealth? According to a recent study, renters are far less likely to invest in the stock market or other assets, simply because they're not forced to think about their long-term financial goals in the same way that homeowners do. In other words, buying a home can be a catalyst for financial discipline and wealth building, simply because it forces you to think about your long-term goals and priorities. Of course, this doesn't mean that renting is inherently bad, far from it. But it does suggest that renters need to be more intentional about investing their money and building wealth outside of their rental property. As we wrap up this video, remember that the best choice between renting and buying ultimately depends on your individual financial situation and goals. Don't get swayed by emotional appeals or blanket statements. Instead, focus on the hard numbers and what works best for you. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear about your own experiences with renting or buying in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about personal finance and wealth building, be sure to check out our other videos on the topic.